Well, the last few weeks we've been in this series called I'm Not Fine, How Are You? And we're taking a look at mental health and we're looking through the lens of the book of Lamentations, right? And so last week, Scott reminded us a little bit of the context of the book of Lamentations. The people of Israel were in exile. And this was a time where there was a lot of emotion going on, Jeremiah wrote this book, and being a prophet, he had the unenviable task of telling the people what they were doing wrong. And as it sounds, they didn't take it so well, right? And that's the role of a prophet in the Old Testament was really hard and challenging. And most prophets were old guys that were a little crotchety, right? But Jeremiah was young, and he was known as the weeping prophet. He had so much emotion in the book of Lamentations. And so it's called Lamentations, which the word lament comes from that. And to lament means to passionately grieve or express sorrow. And so these are some hard emotions, some negative emotions even. And I think it's easy for us, what we like to do with hard emotion is we like to rush past them. As soon as we can be done feeling them, we move past. And maybe we even repress them, push them away, push them down. But God made negative emotion also to serve a purpose for us. There's something for us to do with these emotions that aren't as comfortable for us to feel. God has a purpose for them. The problem isn't with hard emotions or negative emotions that we feel. It's when we let them control us. It's when we let them lead us to sin or run our lives. That's when they become a problem. So I was given the task to talk about anger. And anger is my life struggle. So I feel a little called out, right? And I'm definitely not coming from a lens of, I got this figured out, everybody. I'm in the trenches with you. Anger has been my lifelong struggle and something that I've always tried to work on and grow in. And so I think the interesting thing about this is the whole reason why I come to Celebrate Recovery on Monday nights, right? And so we'll start this way, right? Hello, my name is Matt. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with anger. Some of you got that, okay. We'll try that again. Everyone just say hi to me when I'm done talking, okay? My name is Matt. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus, and I struggle with anger. You can all join us Monday night. You're ready now. That's all it is. That's how we introduce ourselves. But we take a hard look at the stuff we struggle with. And like I said, from an early age, anger has been my thing. Anger has been the thing I struggle with. I was 6 years old, and my dad didn't know what to do with me because every single Little League game, I would wind up in tears at least once. And tears of anger, tears of frustration. And so finally he came up with the ultimate bribe. If you make it through a game without crying, I will buy you a pack of baseball cards. So I have a very small baseball card collection now in my adulthood, because the days I made it were much fewer than the days where I didn't so much make it through my anger. But really, this is how I've been able to try to explain anger, at least my anger. And some of you might be thinking, you don't look angry. And I would say to that, I'm fooling you. That's why, right? I don't want to fool you, and I don't want to struggle with anger, but it's something that has always been kind of running in the background for me, and something that I've tried to ignore. And I've told myself, maybe if you just don't deal with it, it'll go away on its own. It doesn't work that way. Maybe you'll grow out of it. Turned 40 this year, didn't work, right? And so it's something we have to take seriously, and we have to work on. And my version of anger is more of a latent anger or covert anger. It hides from you until it doesn't. And when it doesn't hide, I then recoil, right, with shame, embarrassment, try to stuff that back in the box, right? It's like this angry monster in a cage that lives in somewhere in me, right? And I try to hide it, and when it comes out, I'm embarrassed, and I try to hide it more. It wasn't until Celebrate Recovery that I finally started working on my anger and dealing with my anger. And so for the last 4 years, we've been doing Celebrate Recovery here, and I feel like I've taken amazing strides forward in my anger because I'm not just hiding it and pretending like it doesn't exist. I'm addressing it. And I've learned a lot about anger in general as I've tried to deal with it and try to work on it. So to start our kind of look at anger today, I want to remind us that God gets angry. So anger itself is not a sin. A lot of times I kind of think it is, but it's not. It's when you sin in your anger that it becomes a problem. Here's our proof. God gets angry. God doesn't sin. So anger can't be a sin. There's no denying it or avoiding it. And honestly, this is why a lot of people don't like God, because they see the wrath of God in the Old Testament, and they say, well, that's God. I don't want anything to do with that kind of a God. And some people will say, well, the Old Testament God's hard for me. He's really angry. He's really wrathful. He's full of vengeance. But Jesus, I can handle that. New Testament, awesome. Get it. Grace, love, sacrifice. This is amazing. I can get behind this. But there's not two gods. It's one God. So that anger from God is the same God that we call gracious in the New Testament. It's the same person. And Jesus himself got angry. Don't forget, he got angry. And he, first of all, got angry when the religious leaders were, their outer piety and their inner heart weren't matching, and they were ruling heavy over the people with a legalism. Right, that kind of kept him trapped from really understanding him. Jesus didn't like that. He addressed that. And then we know one case in particular where Jesus cleared the temple they were making it into a marketplace. They were selling sacrifices to people, trying to profit off them. Jesus didn't like that, and he got angry. And I'm not saying, hey, you guys need to leave now. I'm sorry, we're closed. Not that kind of anger, not the Canadian kind of anger that you apologize that you have to be mad. That's not it, right? Jesus was angry, like voice raised, vein in his forehead bulging. I've got this big vein in my forehead. I call it my flux capacitor vein, like from Back to the Future. Looks just like it, actually. And it's like, I'm mad when that thing starts going, right? And Jesus was like that in that moment, but he didn't sin in that anger. He turned over tables. He cleared their merchandise. He wasn't gentle. He was proving a point. God does not like this. You are making the temple into a den of robbers and thieves, right? So God did get angry. But we read a lot of his Old Testament anger out of context, because we get to the wrath part and we're like, man, God's got a temper, right? He's got anger issues, we almost think. But Lamentations shows us a little bit of this, right? We see, again, Jeremiah is a guy who felt a lot of emotion in his writing here. And he took a look at this wrath of God, this anger of God, in chapter 4 of Lamentations. It says this: the Lord gave full vent to his wrath. He has poured out his fierce anger. He kindled a fire in Zion that consumed her foundation, but it happened because of the sins of her prophets and the iniquities of her priests, who shed within her the blood of the righteous. So wrath means literally to boil, right? And like we're boiling water, it doesn't just go from cold to boil. It has to build and it has to grow. And God's anger was predictable in a sense. He was angry at one thing specifically, or a group of things specifically. He was angry at human evil and ongoing, unaddressed sin, also attached to human evil, right? God's anger is actually, as backwards as it sounds, an expression of love and justice. When those he loves are being mistreated, God got angry. When injustice is present and people's voices are being taken and they are being abused, God gets angry. But even in the sense, we see the wrath, but there were thousands of years of patience that led to that. It wasn't just overnight, he's angry. God's character in the Old Testament is described as this: compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness. So in Hebrews, the phrase slow to anger literally translates that God is long of nose. Right, that's kind of a weird way to put it. Anger itself translates to hot nose. We use a different kind of metaphor when we talk about an angry person, don't we? We say they're hot-headed. And this comes from kind of a similar place. When you're angry, when you're elevated, your body temperature rises and you can feel your face getting hot. Me, I feel it right under my eyes. That's where it goes for me. Some people I've seen their ears turn a different shade in their anger. This is true. And so anger is kind of tied to our face in Scripture. And if God is long of nose, that means he's patient. He has a longer fuse before the anger happens. But we often are quick to anger and have a short nose, so to speak. But you see, God is still God. And he has to be true to his character. And he does not like sin. He does not like evil. And so he addresses it. He punishes evil and addresses injustice. But God in the Old Testament is the same God we see in the New Testament. And he's also a father. And fathers must discipline their children, right? And so, but God's anger differs from our anger. Human anger, we are told over and over again in Scripture not to give full vent to our human anger. And the reason and the difference is our anger tends to lead us to sin. And when sin seeps in, it causes all kinds of problems. So Proverbs 29:11 says this: fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end. And that's our goal, right? We want to go from anger to peace. How do we do that? Peace is the ointment that can heal the burn that anger causes. So how do we deal with it? How do we deal with our anger? The question of my life, I would say. Proverbs 16:32 says this: whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. There's great control when you can figure out how to corral your anger. Big things happen when you do. James 1:19, this is like the anger verse I was always taught as a kid, right? This you know, my beloved brothers. But everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. We can't get to righteousness by staying angry and hanging out there as long as we can. And something I've learned, that when we listen, and how we listen to another person can determine whether or not we go to anger and they go to anger. Listening to understand a person rather than just listening to respond back. It can diffuse anger. One of the things we can do is how we respond can play a role in how angry another person gets as well. But for me, anger, I liken it to the waves of the ocean, right? When I feel a wave of anger coming to me, I could see it building sometimes in the distance. My first thought is, if I can just fight through the wave, it won't wash me onto the shore. And that's how it is with anger. If I could just make it for a few seconds past that crescendo of the anger, I can usually control myself and not give in to the anger. But a lot of times, it washes us in, doesn't it? It catches us off guard. And so we have to learn to fight through it. Breathe, take deep breaths, remove yourself. These are things I have to do. Somebody once told me to count to 10, and I never make it past 3. So that doesn't work so well for me. But I know it's a good practice. I know I need to calm down. I need to find a way to identify that and figure out why is that anger boiling. So the first thing we have to do is we have to slow up. We have to slow up in our anger. We have to keep it, we have to just slow down that roll. The second thing we have to do is we have to look back. And so when we look back, we can start to identify what is causing this thing that's making me so angry in the first place. Again, anger isn't the sin. It's when we cross the line into anger. That's where we sin. You've probably heard this verse if anger is your thing like me. Ephesians 4:26 and 27, it says, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. I've always read this book, or this verse, and thought to myself, that's not so easy to do at all, right? Don't let your anger, in your anger, don't sin. Okay, awesome. Even when you're angry about the right stuff. Again, there's certain things that it's okay to be angry about because that's what God gets angry about. But for me, even when I have a righteous anger, I cross a line over into sin at some point when I let it go too long, when I get too angry or lose control. It doesn't end well. So don't sin in your anger, but even that is a little bit tricky. And then the second part of the verse, don't let the sun go down on your anger. So you can only get angry in the AM hours. Is that what I'm learning here? Right? Like, what do you do when the sun's going down? You got to quickly figure it out and put it all back in before the sun. No, that's not what it's literally saying, right? But it's a good reminder that our anger should not go unchecked. We should deal with it. There's something we need to do about it. And if you get angry, when the sun's already down, you're not out of luck, right? It's just take a look at that anger, what's causing it. But I still always have struggled with that verse, like how to really do it. I like the verse, but it seems challenging. And I read a translation that takes a more literal approach of the original language. And here's how it reads. It says, be angry, but don't sin. Don't let the sun go down before you have dealt with the cause of your anger. Otherwise, you leave room for the adversary. So it's not just about get over your anger really, really fast or put it back in the box and shove it down. That's not what it's saying. It's saying look back at the root of your anger. What is causing you to get anger? Is it something in you causing you to get angry? Is it something in them? What triggered them? What triggered you? These are all really good questions to ask when it comes to anger. Examine it in you, because if you can have some kind of a working knowledge of why you get angry, you have a better chance of addressing it next time. Psychologically speaking, right, anger is tied to the fight, flight, or freeze response. And you might be thinking the fight is the anger and the other ones aren't, but no, they all are angry. They're just angry in different ways, right? Fight is that outward anger. Flight is the running from the anger, and freeze is you just don't know what to do because of the anger. And so it's been scientifically proven that prolonged release of the stress hormones that accompany anger can destroy neurons in our brains. And those neurons are directly associated with judgment, short-term memory, and even weaken your immune system. So getting angry and staying angry can make you sick. Like literally, it could damage your memory. And so unrestricted is not good for us. That's why God doesn't want us to camp out and hang out in the anger place for long. The Apostle Paul addressed it a lot. Ephesians 4 was the Apostle Paul. Just a few verses later, he says it this way. He says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, violent assertiveness, and slander, along with all spitefulness. Like get rid of it all. Don't let it hang out. Don't let it stay there. So let's break this down, each piece of this verse, right? Bitterness is that heart anger, right? Where we just let it hang out in our heart until it's triggered again and then it comes out again. Rage is explosive anger. Violent assertiveness is verbal anger. And slander is a specific kind of verbal anger that goes right after somebody's personal character. All of that is toxic, right? It damages relationships. It damages even our reputation, right? It's not good to hang out there. Another verse from Paul in Colossians 3 says, get rid of these things of the old nature, right? He's talking about the flesh and how we need to put that off and put on the Spirit. And it says this, but now you must also rid yourself of all of such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and even filthy language, right? So the triggering event that brings on the anger. So for example, if you're cut off in traffic, that could trigger anger. No one's ever experienced that in the Grove parking lot, though. That's the good news. That's never, ever happened. It happens to us. And I think part of the reason why, for whatever reason, traffic stuff is such a big, road rage is such a thing, is because when you're driving, it's your safety on the line or your family's safety, and that hits a nerve when somebody's carelessness, is a safety concern. Or they're making you late for work. That's bad too, right? But what makes some people more prone to anger than others, right? This is my question, because I'm like, man, that person seems like they got it all together, but I get angry so easy. There's lots of things that play into this. First, personality traits, where you've been and what you've done, who you were raised by, what trauma you developed through your lifetime. Tolerance for frustration and irritation. Sometimes you have a bit of a tolerance built up because of that, or you have no tolerance because you don't have a lot of irritation in your life, or vice versa. Competitiveness, that's something that hits me. I don't like to look dumb or stupid or embarrassed, and so that usually brings up a little wave of anger for me when I do that. And then just how easily offended a person is definitely plays a factor as well. Now, we have to be aware, because a lot of times we are hanging out because of the other factors we have going on in our life right now in the pre-anger phase, right? Or what I'm calling the danger zone. So beware of the danger zone. And these are bound to strike a chord with you, at least a few of them. And so when you are going through a great deal of stress at any given moment, you are in pre-anger. Okay? You're going to be easily or more easily triggered to anger because of that stress that's going on right now. If you're highly anxious, you probably hang out there a lot. If you're in the middle of a situation of anxiety, you're in pre-anger. When you're tired, exhausted, irritable, you are pre-angry, right? You could be a hairpin trigger away from anger at that moment, right? When you're hungry, yes, hangry is a real thing, right? Some of you are hangry right now. Good news, we'll have some donuts for you later, so you can grab one on your way out so you don't bite your family's head off. That's good. But hangry is a real thing, and if you think about it, it's like our bodies need food, and so when we feel like we're not getting a primal thing, right, there's a response going on. When you're grieving, you are in pre-anger, overwhelmed, fatigued. And so this isn't to call any of us out. It's for us to be aware that, man, when I'm in these situations, I'm more prone to anger. So be aware. Be aware that you could easily be triggered to anger when you're hanging out in those spaces. And so it's important for us, as we are looking back at what's causing us to get angry, it's good to look back and then we have to get the roots out. If you're pulling a weed, you can't just rip off a couple leaves on the top. You got to dig it out. You got to dig that root out, get it out of your garden, so to speak. So why are you angry? We know anger is a secondary emotion, and so it comes from somewhere inside you. And there's a couple things that usually accompany anger, fear and hurt. And so when you're angry, it might be good to ask a question, what am I afraid of? It sounds weird. I'm angry. I'm not afraid. No, but there might be fear there, because fear is tied to anger often. Why am I afraid that it would cause me to get angry? Or where's the hurt? Who hurt me? What hurt me? Why is this hurt causing me to respond in anger? A lot of times we're getting angry because we've got a wound, right? That's bleeding. We feel it. It hurts. And so instead of dealing with that, we lash out, and that's how anger shows itself. So why am I angry? Better question, why am I afraid? And why am I hurt? And then when we're angry for the right things, because there are times where it's good to be angry because it's righteous anger that we see in Jesus when people are misusing God's house and when God sees people being treated poorly, right? So, but for me, it's like when I am angry at the right things, I still sometimes cross that line, and I don't want to do that. So the question then, when I'm angry at the right things, is, God, what do you want me to do about this? What can I do? What action should I take to be part of the solution, not a part of the problem? Is there something I need to address in someone I love? Hey, I noticed this, and this isn't right. We need to talk about this. That's a hard conversation to have. But that could be where the good kind of anger leads you to, is having a loving conversation about something that needs to change, a course correction that needs to be made. I say start with prayer. God, show me. Show me what I should do. I feel like this anger's from you. What do I do with it? Break my heart for what breaks yours. Show me how to stand up for the right thing, even when it's difficult. So then, our goal, the third step here, is to move towards peace. Move forward towards peace. And again, self-awareness helps us with that. When we're aware of where we cross the line from the right kind of anger to the sinful anger, that can help us. And so when you notice a selfish kind of anger inside of you, don't leave it there. Don't just hope it goes away or you grow out of it, right? Instead, address it drastically. Apologize early and often. And as I was thinking about this, I wrote in parentheses for myself, even to your kids, apologize to them. And I had an opportunity to do that recently, and it was like a holy ground moment. And the graciousness of my own daughter, forgiving me, just blew me away and put me in a much better place. And so apologize, even when it's to your kids, and make it right. Do what it takes to make it right. Make amends. And in CR, we talk about amends a lot. And one of the things we say about it is it really has nothing to do with if the person you're apologizing to apologizes back to you. That's not what amends is. If they do, awesome. But amends is about you owning your part, right? And so going to that person that you've hurt in your anger and saying, I messed up, and I'm sorry, and you did not deserve that. Start there. And that will diffuse anger by itself. Just like that, in yourself and probably in that other person. And then pray for the person that made you angry. Man, that's hard to do. And I think one of the interesting things about that is you'll find they probably need your prayer because they probably had part of what made you angry. There's a good chance that you had a little bit of a reason to get angry. Now, we probably took it too far. But they probably could use your prayers. So pray for them. Years ago, I was helping a friend move and had this pickup truck all loaded up with stuff. And I'm driving her truck, a truck I'd never really driven before, and we have a load. And I pulled out in front of somebody a little bit too close for their liking, right? And so they pulled up alongside me and said some very colorful words at me, right? Instantly triggered. You can picture this, right? And I felt those same words kind of coming out of my mouth. And instantly, the person I'm with is looking at me kind of like with this, you're supposed to be a pastor, what's up with you? Look. It's a very specific look, but I felt it. And instantly, that very familiar cocktail of shame and guilt and embarrassment came flooding in. And I was like, I can't, I got nothing to say to her. She heard it. I said it all, So it pulled over. And I think for all the swings and misses in my life when it comes to anger, I responded correctly in this one situation for sure. I pulled over and I said, let's pray for that guy. And I prayed for him. I prayed for whatever was going on with his life. I prayed for whoever it was he was about to talk to next. I prayed for his family. I prayed for why he had such a quick trigger. I prayed for all of that, not knowing this guy, never seeing him again. But I instantly felt that anger drain out of me. And it was because I chose peace. I chose prayer. I chose humility in the midst of anger. And I decided that I was going to, instead of harping on the fact that he was out of line, I was going to choose peace. So to that, I ask you, who are persons of peace in your life? Think of one or two people as you're sitting here, as I'm talking. Who is a person that represents peace in your life? They have an ability to calm you down when you get a little worked up. When you walk in hot into a room, they have this ability to cool the temperature, to bring it down, to chill you out a little bit. Now, I'm not saying they don't also struggle with anger. Those things can coexist. They do for me. But we need to surround ourselves with people of peace to remind us that peace is possible, that we can find peace even in the midst of a moment of extreme anger. God wants us to not live there, not camp there, but move towards peace. And that's what CR is for me on Monday nights. For the last almost 4 years, I've get to go to that table over there, that big long table, and sit with other guys who struggle with things. And I have a built-in place to tell on myself about my anger. And I do. And they hear me, and they don't receive it with shame and guilt. They receive it with grace and encouragement. They encourage me to keep growing. They encourage me to keep sharing with them. And so I know as soon as I mess up in a week, I know what I got to say on Monday. And it works. Accountability is beautiful. And it brings such peace and hope to me when I'm working on something I struggle with, like anger. 1 Peter 3:10 and 11 says this: whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. They must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. I love that. Seek peace. Pursue peace. Just like anger is not something that goes away on its own if you ignore it, peace doesn't happen if you don't seek it out. You don't just stumble upon peace. You got to pursue it. You got to hunt it. You got to seek it. You have to go after it fiercely. And so peace is this thing, again, that fills the spot. It cools me. It heals the burn that anger causes. Peace comes from God. Philippians talks about how the peace of God is what we get when we pray. And it's a peace that passes understanding, a peace that can be present when it doesn't make sense for there to be peace present. I love that. And this peace of God comes to us from the God of peace. And he's placed people of peace in your world, all around you. Some, you're already thinking of them. For those people that you know, there may be a mile ahead of you on the path to peace. Get lunch with them this week. Get coffee with them. Hey, how do you do it? And they'll tell you, hey, I also struggle. And that's okay. But learn from them. Learn from these people that are a little further down the road towards peace for you. Peace is something worth fighting for. As backwards as that sounds, it is. And even fighting the thing within you that you're not proud of, the thing you struggle with, something like anger. But you can't heal things by saying they don't exist. You can't. Instead, you address them, you bring them out to light. You slow it down, right? You recognize when you're angry. You look back at what's causing it, and then you move forward. Take steps towards peace, growing, healing. Let's pray. God, thank you for reminding us today that you are a God of peace. That you don't want us to live in anger, get stuck in pre-anger. You want us to move forward. You want us to move and step into peace. I pray for everyone here that they could be a person of peace in their family, for their friends, for their co-workers, their neighbors. Make us people of peace, to cool down the temperature of the room, to bring hope, to bring light, to bring healing. It's in Jesus' name we pray.